And we're live.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here for Community Engagements meeting today, Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Can I get a roll call, Mr. Pridnoff?
Mr. Bussey?
Here.
Cheney?
Here.
Mr. Fisher is absent. Ms. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Thomas is absent.
I did hear from Ms. Thomas that her work schedule wouldn't allow for her to come today, and we did hear from Mr. Fisher. I'll set a motion to excuse both Ms. Thomas and Mr. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Has everyone had a moment to review the agenda? I'll set a motion to adopt the agenda. Adopt it. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't see anyone here to address the committee. There's no one registered to address the committee. And has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting for review?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did I just sign those, or do you want me to sign those? I signed the one before, yeah. Might as well do it now.
I would agree.
All right, great. Moving on, there is some new business.
Did I do?
I'm gonna flip the order just because it makes more sense to talk about the Parks Committee update and then go into the new business. That's okay with everybody.
Paul, should I cross that?
No, you took the minutes, I think.
Oh, I just didn't put your name. Not put it. I got it. Okay.
So yeah, at the last Parks meeting, we we worked on the online survey to get more results for the park infrastructure to put online. We've gotten a lot of good results, 80 online responses so far. About 50, we haven't, tallied them up because not everyone did all their 5 votes. So it was a little more challenging to, figure out how many exactly voted at the C76 celebration with the sticker dots, but it's about 50. And there's been 7 for paper that's been received at the box at my house, at the little library. So all in total, so far, if I did this math correct, which I don't think I did, wow. I was doing it real quick just a moment ago. Okay, so I think 80 plus 50 plus 70 is 137 responses so far. So that's pretty great. So we were talking at the Parks meeting, the intent is the scope of the Parks Committee was to, hear from the community and what do they really want in the park. And then we would present that to council. We would make some sort of report we plan to do at the next meeting. But then we were thinking, it seemed like it was becoming more programming. It kind of started at the beginning. The group is very excited about more what can we do in the park rather than the infrastructure and recommendations like that. Everyone was pretty eager to do things like that. So I asked if people if they would want to volunteer to be on a recreation commission if we were to restart that. All of them agreed yes. So there's, I think, 4 from that. Then I have another 2 or 3 people that seem pretty interested. My understanding is the recreation commission was shut down before because it needed 9 members. And that's, can be pretty challenging to find 9 volunteers. But I think we have, like I said, about 7 right now. So I don't know if between all of us or put some feelers out in the community, I think we can pretty easily get 9. And these 5 there are 7 so far are very committed to it, and they'd be interested in doing something like that. And I feel like the momentum, I've been getting a feel on the meetings, and there's a lot of momentum and excitement. I definitely want to keep that going, and I think there could be some good things that come from it. That'd be positive. So if we could look into, so I guess that's the parks update. Going on the new business to be a recreation commission, what we need to do to start that up, or if there are any people in mind that anyone has, and also would love to hear what happened before the Parks Recreation Commission, different things to look out for. I know burnout is a big
Burnout,
thing,
that's
right?
what it was.
I hear that a lot.
The same 4 people all the time
hmm
doing the same events.
So do
And then
you-
people not showing up for the event.
For the event that was
Mhm.
planned.
Breakfast with Santa was the best event. We
Okay.
had an Easter egg hunt the last time and 2 people came for 1,000. 2 kids came for 1,000 eggs in the park. No, they were in heaven.
2?
Yeah, 2. Yeah, so it wasn't worth all the trouble because we had to put candy in all those eggs the night
Mhm.
before, and the week before, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 2 guiding documents when it comes to the Recreation Commission. One is the charter. And the charter simply says, under section 8.02 Recreation Commission, that there will be a, created within the village, a Recreation Commission whose number and rules and regulations will be set by ordinance. So that's what the charter says. So then it switches to the ordinances. And I know there was something passed in 2009. Paul is looking for that. I couldn't find it in reference on the online code. But the chapter 137 addresses the Recreation Commission. And there were some, I can't recall offhand what the changes were that the 2009 ordinance made. Hopefully she'll find that for us. But this is what is set forth by council to operate the Recreation Commission with whatever changes the 2009 ordinance made.
And I don't think it changed the number of people, did it? I can't
I don't think
remember
it did.
either. 9 is really too many.
We,
9 people are definitely needed, but I don't know if the commission actually needs 9 sitting on it.
Did you need an extra copy?
yeah, I wanted a lot of copies of this. So this was researched back when I formed the Community Engagement Committee. It was one of the 3 goals of the formation of the Community Engagement Committee. When I researched, I got legal counsel to help me and have all the stipulations of what the, I can read it too. So it was the 1973 ordinance, which created the Recreation Commission for the first time. 24 years later, there was a 1996 ordinance that enacted the further definitions in 1997 and 1998, supplementing the original. And then 11 years later, there was a 2009 ordinance, which was enacted defining the constitution and bylaws of the commission under Mayor Sabiro. And those rationales then are summarized here, or the bylaws rather are summarized. That's where the bylaws and constitution of it, only time there's a constitution and bylaws overwritten, it stated there has to be 9 members plus a liaison, so 10 residents, and a quorum of 5 voting members, so at least 6 residents. And that's under Article 3A. These members have to have background checks submitted and approved prior to being activated as members. That's under Article 3, E and F. And any volunteers as well, if they are to be around children 18 years or younger, also need background checks. The commission needs to file certain regular reports and follow certain rules designated in the ordinance. Those being minutes for meetings need to be taken and follow the format designated in the ordinance. So that's 2009-3, Article 9D and 6C. Expenditures need to be approved by council prior to being made by the commission. That's Article 6A. Reports need to be made by council on schedule that reflect 25% of its expenditures have been made for park improvements and recreational programs in the park. That's in the ordinances, chapter 137.03, and the status of facilities and programs. And then there's a write-up on how to get into compliance with that, as opposed to changing the rules of it so that we can, so there are 2 strategies. One is, well, we can rewrite the rules so that we can be in compliance with 3 members. And the other is to figure out how to get in compliance with the existing rules. Let's see, so to begin a process of recruiting members through our Community Engagement Committee, This will take a while. This was written in 2020. Develop a process for receiving and reviewing background checks. Mayor can have the village administrator speak to Chief Campbell about possible assistance with this process. Once we have enough residents interested who have passed the required background check, have the proposed members approved, voted on by council with with term limits compliant with 137.02 of the ordinance. Recommend 3 members for 1-year terms, 3 members for 2-year terms, 3 members for 3-year terms. All following terms will be 3 years. The Recreation Commission, again, this is all just right out of the ordinance. The Recreation Commission will once again be able to make recommendations to council and operate at the council's direction once at least 5 members have been approved by council and are present, establishing quorum. I recommend that it delays operation until 9 members have been voted on by council to afford continued operations with inevitable absences. So in the meantime, have the membership of the Community Engagement Committee take on the responsibilities of the Recreation Commission with regard to activity planning and deployment until such time the Recreation Commission is once again able to function in compliance with the village ordinance. This makes sense because the Community Engagement Committee will likely be involved in most of the Recreation Commission's events anyway, given the goal to enhance community communication about participation in village events. Therefore, it makes sense to have them involved in working on recreation events while we're identifying and appointing members to lead us to the Recreation Commission. I was trying to make copies of this, but I just feel like for some reason I've got one out. I apologize, I didn't one-side it as well. Okay, I would get some assistance with the two-side, I should get everyone a copy of that. So this is, I went back and found where it's documented in our minutes and online. So when we look at the first community engagement committee meeting that was online, it's cited as the 3 goals. One was the goals of the recreation, of the community engagement committee. Then in the follow-up council meeting, I submitted this to be included in the minutes. I never did find that, but it's you can see that there. I'm trying to remember what the other 2 goals are. I know that one of them got added to because Mr. Van Harn presented the new idea about our 75th anniversary coming up and that we should have some kind of celebration around it. And that should be one of the goals of community engagement, is to get people involved with that. That's what I remember it was census and it's down here one more place. It was Census, Recreation Commission, and the 3 that I have is the 75th celebration as well. But I know that was a late one. There was 3, and then that one got added in.
So it certainly feels like there's enough for recreation to do. It seems like we have some consistent events that they could take over, and I think that would be less of a burden on the administration, especially for the C70s, the celebrations. Let's see. So we just need 5 to get it established, but
That was the council of our legal counsel and looking at how many we needed to get it started. The significant thing about that is under the ordinance, you're not supposed to spend any money unless it's agreed to by council, recommended by the commission. And then there's specific reports that need to be made as well. That's why I photocopied like what all the requirements are to be in compliance. To be operating outside of that is technically against the laws that we created.
And I certainly think 9 is a lot of people, but I think it would be really helpful to have the 9, just because, like you said, just as far as volunteers. And I think the whole point too is to get people engaged. I think there's a lack of opportunity right now, whether like there is the opportunity or not, but it's almost like a perception, like how do I get plugged in, or how can I help, or how can I volunteer? I think this would be a really good way for people to get involved, and I think that it would allow a lot of people volunteer opportunities too. We got the 9 members that are appointed, and then I think there'd be a lot of other people that could kind of gather around that too, that would be volunteering as well, even though they're not a member.
So the big question I always hear when I ask somebody if they'll join recreation or whatever is, what do I have to do? When you tell them what they have to do, they say, no, I don't have that much time. The treasurer, which I was for a long time, all the rules have changed, the audits have changed. There's so much the treasurer has to do that they're not going to do it unless they're paid for it.
So
You
how
know.
much time do you feel like that took? Or like is that like
Okay,
10 hours
so
a
you
month,
have to keep a log of all the money, everything for each event's separate. You have to set up a budget at the beginning of the year for each event. And then you have to submit everything to council for approval. But you got to keep track of all that. You got to keep track of all the money coming in. The money doesn't go to recreation anymore because we feel that some of that money disappeared. So the money goes, the checks gonna all go into the clerk's office here. But if you want to do something, you have to write up a purchase order and submit it of what you think it's going to cost for that event. Then, once you have the event, you have to submit, Ron, help me here, what is it? You have to submit an expense form, right? Am I missing something?
So at the end of the Recreation Commission, when we redid our finances, what we asked was that a plan be done for each event, and then a purchase order, which we now call purchase requisition,
Okay,
issued for each individual event. And then the expense report was only if people had individual expenses that needed to be
Yes.
reimbursed.
and they had,
So
yes,
in reality, our preference would be that people don't get reimbursed, that it's done in the system
yeah, right, but
without having to
we didn't
do
have that.
personal.
We paid up front and we donated money
So
too.
this is the 2009 ordinance. Pass that down.
But we did ask all the businesses too for money at the beginning of the year,
I think I've only got
and they were pretty generous. I mean, last time we got $1,500.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
We used to make the breakfast at Breakfast with Santa, but because of the generous donations from the businesses, we were able to go to Vonderhaar's and get breakfast, which really took some of the, what is the word? Off of the volunteers for the
Burden.
work, yeah, yeah,
Workload.
workload, yes.
So I'm kind of hearing that this treasury position is probably the most important, or to really get someone that's committed to that. Yeah, I don't know who that would be at this moment, and we'll have to can think about. I mean, it's council's appointment, but kind of have someone in mind, or because that does seem like
It's a very important job. And when I took it over, I don't remember what year, but the person that had it before gave me nothing. I have no idea about anything. I had to start from scratch.
it's a certain skill set too, or it takes a certain somebody to do that.
You can learn and I could do it. Uh-huh.
Just takes longer.
It does.
More time. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then once you get checks back and all, you have to make sure that the people that donated the money get their check. I mean, it's a lot to do.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to be able to dedicate time to that.
So,
Yeah.
under that old scheme,
Mm-hmm.
we did not have a full-time fiscal officer on board. So at that time, we had one person who was doing everything.
Yeah, Andy.
I would
That's true.
ask the fiscal officer
Yeah.
to look at the
Okay,
ordinance or to get information on what Ms. Cheney had previously done and develop a best practice for dealing with financial issues. And I think we've kind of got a template from that, from the Celebration 76
Yeah.
thing. So I don't think that position should be as cumbersome as it was in the past,
mhm,
because we've streamlined the financial process.
Okay.
But I think we also want the ordinance to be in alignment with what we're actually doing. So it probably makes sense to take a look at that ordinance and see what's relevant and what needs
I agree.
council's weigh in on what needs to be changed.
How we can make it easier. Mhm. I have everything, and I have it all organized in a binder, so I can give that to you if you want.
Great,
Okay.
absolutely. You can coordinate that and
Okay.
that'll make the whole position a
Okay.
lot easier.
Feel like we've had a lot of stops and starts with restarting recreation. So this is exciting to
Mhm,
hear that we might possibly
mhm.
do it. Would it make sense perhaps to put a target date of like after the new year, after the new council seated, and that gives enough time to look at the budget stuff and the ordinance and all of that, and maybe just start fresh with the new year?
Mhm.
As far as like between now and then, we're getting everything in a
Yeah.
row and then hopefully
Right.
enact it in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. I mean, that would be just 3 more meetings for us.
Yeah.
October, November, December.
Mm-hmm.
Janet should give the fiscal officer the opportunity to review the records and come up with a recommendation for controlling expense.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the question will ultimately be if purchases have to be, according to ordinance, if purchases have to be approved by council. So that itself is already a significant control, but I think it's probably a little cumbersome for that. So if that is changed, then I would think doing it no differently than what we would do a regular requisition. It just goes to me first and then you, if obviously the number is higher than my assignment, it should never be that.
When the expense is controlled by appropriations.
Right, so I'm saying, as long as we have the appropriations ahead of time and you and I are looking at the purchase requisitions, then I don't see that really being a bigger problem, unless council wants to retain the oversight of every expense coming out of that commission, excuse me.
I don't think they did last time, did they?
That's, was
Was
I
it
misunderstanding?
quarterly?
It hadn't in the last iteration, no.
And also, the last year, I think it's the last year, we've been begging council for money to help us instead of having to go out all the time and beg. I think they gave us $2,000 to start us, right?
So.
Which
in-
also helped us go to.
Starting in
catering.
2018, the account was seeded with $2,000
Okay.
every year, and then anything additional you had to raise.
Right.
But what we've proposed in the current appropriations is 12,000 to fund village
Okay.
events.
Okay. That's even better.
Mhm.
Mhm. So I'm thinking if we can't get enough volunteers, then if we have the money, maybe we could pay volunteers a little bit, whatever, to get them to work. If we have that
So
problem.
$12,000 does not go far.
It doesn't go far, right?
Because the other expense that that recreation will have is paying for service department and police personnel at
Right.
events.
Yeah, we used to do that with the festival. The last year we had the festival, we had no volunteers. We used teenagers and the money walked away. Uh-huh. So it's something you have to think about too.
Right.
I don't know, maybe people need to be bonded. I don't know.
Where was the money coming from? What were they?
Oh, back in, when we did the festival, we had a $10,000, we brought in $10,000 just about every year. And we had fireworks too that we paid out of that. Plus we had gambling.
This was like at the event, it was like a get in the door kind of, or you would pay money?
No. No, I don't even think we had any rides. Can't remember. I think it was just all booze and food, cotton candy. I made cotton candy one year and I'll never make it again.
Mhm.
It goes in your face and your hair.
Everywhere.
The new machines are probably better though.
No,
But yeah,
it gets
those were
everywhere.
good days. What?
It gets everywhere.
Yeah.
My
Also,
fourth, I was making cotton candy for a while. It gets everywhere.
uh-huh. And also, it was easier years ago too, because we had a volunteer fire department and they all had to live here. So they did a lot of volunteering and their wives.
Mhm.
We don't have that anymore. So it's changed. We just have to change with it.
How did volunteers go for C-76?
For this last one, we didn't use volunteers, we used vendors.
Oh, okay. They just kind of took care of all their own stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where like a lot of events are kind of going towards. Or,
So much easier.
Mhm.
My fire department, when it was volunteer, used to do the cooking, the grilling. And they all got really drunk.
they're doing it.
I think the value of the commission is to get input from the community and kind of drive the agenda in terms of the things that we do. The actual administration of the events needs to be somebody who's going to be accountable for making things happen. And that's where I have talked for some time about looking at what other communities do and have a recreation coordinator whose main purpose is to engage the community, deal with rentals. Good example of a need for that is we had a large wedding here over the weekend
Oh,
in the hall, which is why we're missing chairs at the moment. But it was a successful event, but there was a lot of detail on Saturday that needed to be taken care of that it would be helpful to have somebody on staff whose job is to make that happen. So,
Yeah. My daughter's wedding
another
was
thing
here,
to
so
think
I
about.
know. You do need somebody here.
And also, I will mention too, as far as like a recreation commission, I've noticed it would really feel like home. I think there's like a missing piece, like people talk about the pool or like just the sense of community. I think just redoing the recreation commission, I think getting it going again and doing more of these things. Like I think kind of the events in the park have kind of been like a teaser, or like kind of going off of like, people, I've been talking to people in the park, at events, and people like it, but they want more. They're like, they really, I feel like it's a good start. It's been like a nice start to it. I feel like people are craving that. And people really want that sense of community and pride in Goff Manor. I think it's kind of missing right now. So there's like another component to it too. It's not just like entertainment or for events. And I think there's a huge value here for the commission. Oh, and I was going to mention, maybe we could talk about it later, but I think it would be really interesting to call it Parks and Rec. There was a really popular TV show back in the day. I think that would get some people interested, maybe that normally, maybe they wouldn't if it was just recreation or something. So I think Parks and Rec would kind of make it seem kind of more interesting. So I would recommend maybe considering calling it that for the purpose of recruiting volunteers. But it sounds like we have a pretty good basis right now. Sounds like a lot of our financial constraints can be helped by a fiscal officer. So I don't know if that person's still really important, that secretary or the treasurer. So we'll have to consider that.
And they have to take the secretary takes the minutes too, and he has to turn them in.
Okay.
Does it make sense to make the secretary just, if the fiscal officer is the secretary of that commission? Is that
Okay.
a possibility?
That's That's another way of doing it,
I
yeah.
mean, it seems like,
That would be consistent with the way we've organized the village administration.
I don't see why we wouldn't wanna do that.
That would take burden off of a lot of volunteers, right?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Also streamlines the minute-taking process, which you have expressed to me in the past has not always been so consistent.
So should we start recruiting people now or start, I guess?
I think you need to analyze the ordinance, and that could be done fairly quickly. So just who wants to lead that,
I can lead it.
review it.
I can lead it since I've been around for a long time. You think?
You're volunteering.
Yeah.
Great. Any more discussion on this? Sounds like we have a good start. Thank you for volunteering to analyze that.
So do you want to have a review of the current ordinance at the next community engagement meeting?
I'm not gonna be here. I'll be in Tennessee.
Okay, so is someone else able to do that?
I'm happy to do it if I'm invited. I've done it already, did it, what was that, 3 years ago? I have the documents, I can get a refresher from the council about what all I received prior. It's not the experience that Ms. Cheney has with how it was run, but it would be an analysis of what it says on the books in terms of how it should be run, to be compliant. So again, I remember that was the issue that, according to, we weren't operating according to our own ordinances. We weren't submitting the reports, ensuring that 25% of the money was being used for park improvement, that kind of stuff.
The 25% we brought in wasn't enough to do anything in the park.
Get some mulch or something, yeah.
Not even that. Maybe a tree.
It does say on here, it says park improvements and programs.
Right.
Recreation. Okay,
Right.
I thought that it had to be improvements, but,
I think that 25% was from when we did the festival and brought all that money in.
I think that there's and I can speak to this as we move along with any proposed changes. I think it's important that the commission does stay independent. I think there's a reason why it states a treasurer and secretary. I think the administration can certainly help with that, but I think that those positions do need to stay in place. Commissions are separate from the administration for a reason, to be an independent body with regard to money that's considered to be a priority of the village, and to have resident control over that. And I believe that's the consensus of the spirit behind that kind of thing. I wasn't here when it was written, but it very clearly has structured the commission as independent from the administration. I am all for administration helping out with those positions that make it, it harder to operate, but not to the extent that it becomes then dependent on the administration, if that makes sense.
yeah, because it sounds like if that was the case, they'd just be morphing into one, or they would be asking for approval from administration for everything. Definitely agree with that. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having you at the next meeting,
Okay.
to analyze that. Is that okay with everyone else here?
So that was a motion to, or that was a recommendation?
I guess
Go
we're,
ahead and make it a motion.
yeah, so set a motion for the mayor to come to the next meeting and he'll analyze, all the charters and ordinances for the commission. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Cool. Is that everything on that topic, or we're okay? We're leaving things? Great. We'll look forward to having you at our next meeting, Mr. Mayor. Moving on. Is there an economic report, Mr. Hurd?
The only thing that I would report at this point is the RFP has been published for the demolition of the 4 buildings on Weehee. That was advertised on Sunday, will be advertised on the next Sunday in the Inquirer. We've started receiving inquiries about the bid process. The actual acceptance of bids will be on October 11th by open bid at 10 a.m. here in Chambers. So hopefully we'll have a direction on demolishing those buildings.
Which buildings are those?
So it's the 2200 Lasanaville, 6512 Weehee, and 6516, 6520 Weehee.
Great. That concludes your report. We can move on to communication, Snyder. Sorry. Yeah, we're gonna keep those off, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna take communication and nonprofit off.
Yeah.
Is what we agreed on last time. Only because we haven't had anything to report on. I assume that if you did have something to report on that, you would speak up and you'd share that with us. Okay. So I guess given that, I can make the announcement, the next meeting. Is there anything else we wanted to discuss before we ended our meeting? Okay. Oh, sorry, I skipped over you, Ms. Cheney, for education report.
PRM LSDMC did meet last Wednesday. We're holding steady at 745 kids. We have 25 new teachers this year, and that is because we are now certified Montessori. So some of those teachers couldn't teach anymore at the school. There is a new IT tech teacher now too. David Church was our tech and librarian before, but with the new certifications that they have to have, David didn't have that. And so now he's just going to be the librarian. And the district changed the variables on the one plan that the principal puts together every year as far as comparing what needs to be done from the Ohio report card. And then LSDMC starts to approve it in October. And this year, we're really close to our one plan. So we feel really good about that. And then the pedestrian scramble was mentioned. They've had some problems with people up there with speeders and in front of the school at Lester and Montgomery. Yeah. So people are running it. They're not stopping for when they have the red light, and they are turning left when they're not supposed to. So they need to educate people about a pedestrian scramble. And I told them I would put something on our website to let people know what a pedestrian scramble is. Do you know what a pedestrian scramble is? Where all traffic stops for all 4 directions. And then just the walk lights come on. And I also learned too that, and I don't think many of us knew this, there's 2 crosswalks there. One coming over from the light at the church on the one side of Montgomery Road, and then across the street of Lester, there's another one there. So when the walk light comes on, the kids are allowed to cross counterwise if they want, but principal's not going to allow that. She said she thinks it's too dangerous. So they have to stay on that one side coming over. So once we get that done, they do have a office there in the morning, but she doesn't have a car, to pick up anybody speeding or whatever. But she has called out a few people. So that does help. Just getting people used to what a pedestrian scramble is what we need to do. We have 2 new members, parent members, Annie Coates and Laura Weber for this term. And we have a new teacher, Wendy Putoff, and yes, she is related to the Putoffs here. She is married to Linda and Dennis Putoff's son, Andy. That's all I have.
Great.
Moving ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, and the officers were elected again, and we kept the same officers, so I'll still chair. Yeah, and Tammy Kaufman will vice chair, and Gwen Roth is going to be our secretary, taking her minutes again. You know, nobody wants these positions. Good try.
And then, how are things going with the construction? I saw that they
Oh, I
have some
forgot
of
to
the
mention that.
They have some of the structure up.
Yes.
It looks like.
The walls are going up, yay. And the school's working very well around all the construction. Yeah, it's been a little bit difficult at times, but it's working. Everybody's getting used to it.
I forget the completion date. I mean, with
Fall of
next.
2024,
Okay.
in the next school
There
year.
was a good article in the Inquirer over the weekend about construction at PRM.
Oh, I haven't read that paper yet, thanks. And also the construction across the street on the apartments.
Which should be done about the same time. I think I saw this.
Probably.
Yeah.
Uh-huh,
Should be nice. Just get it all done. Get it all done at once. Or
I know, and see
Terrible
if we're
what's
gonna have
happening.
any more kids from it, but most of them are single units, single.
yeah, like half
Yeah.
of them are going to be one
One bedroom.
bedrooms. Mhm.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Well, if you don't have anything else to report, that concludes your report. The next community engagement meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 17th at 9:30 in this room. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Good.
Thanks for being here.
thank you. What, on the park thing, what